morning. Welcome to the shed. I'm Jason, and today we're working with flat belts. As always, I'm not a professional. This is merely how I do things based on my experiences, my training, etc. If you decide to take on a project after watching one of my videos, the results are on you. Honestly, if you're facing the success of your project on some chubby hillbilly you saw on YouTube, you may have bigger issues. Now on to the video. So I apologize for the camera setup. I am new to making videos. I know I have a very annoying pause in my talking, and you just won't have to deal with that. One of my many quirks. So what is a flat belt? Well, this is an example. This is 4 inches wide. This is actually about wore out. It doesn't have a whole lot of grip left in it. I'm not even entirely certain what it came off of. Probably the sawmill, maybe a grist mill, hay baler, something of that nature. Most modern equipment does not use flat belts. You will probably encounter them on a farm, especially if you're using older equipment. They use transmit power, usually from like a stationary engine, PTO, or line shaft onto a piece of equipment. And they're also used in conveyor belts as the moving surface. And if you are using a round baler, you'll probably recognize them as what rotates the hay in the bale chamber. Flat belts can be made of leather. Those of you that have like old South Bend lathes or old metal working equipment will probably recognize that form. They can be made from rubber, canvas, nylon, or a combination of several materials. The one we're working with today is made out of, appears to be mostly canvas, maybe some nylon in there. Looks like it might be a little thin piece of rubber. But all of them, no matter what they're made out of, basically serves the same function, either transmitting power or moving something along the conveyor belt. And there's really 2 ways to attach the ends of these flat belts. The first type, and the oldest type, is take a piece of leather. I got this little piece cut off here, and you sew them. And then you have methods of lacing. Now I don't know the actual names. I've always heard as clipper, alligator, and butterfly. I have the most experience with clipper. So let's get on and let's sew the ends of these belts together. Okay, so when you're sewing flat belts, it is more so than when you're lacing flat belts. It's important to remember you have 2 sides of belt. You have your pulley side, which is here, and then you have your weather side. Don't know which one it is. Pretend this is a pulley. This can right here is a pulley. As your belt goes around the pulley, the part facing out is your weather side, and the part next to the pulley, well, that's your pulley side. Now when you're sewing a belt, you're going to have 2 knots, and you want to make sure that those knots are on your weather side. You don't want them being on the inside, so when it goes over your pulley, it skips over your pulley. So you want that to be away from the pulley. So that's, and I apologize for the camera. This is not ideal. So you want to go through. Let's see if we can see this a little better here. Alright, so you have your 8 holes. This is where you're going to start. This is on the weather side. This is the pulley side. I kept the curvature to kind of help you keep that straight. So we're going to start right here on the number 1 hole. So we've got our knot. You can see why that needs to be on the outside. You really don't want that skipping over your pulley. We're going to go right here like this, okay? So that's hole number one. It's coming through this hole here. This is the part that's riding up against the pulley. See how much smoother that is than having that big old thing pop over your pulley? And then from here, it's fairly simple. So we're going to basically, it's just like sewing. You're going to loop it around, work your way over to one side, and then you're going to work your way back over, and then you're going to come back halfway, and then you're going to tie it off in the center. And you always want to make sure that the flattest points are against the pulley. You want to disrupt the pulley as least as possible. So anytime you're changing rows, going off to the edges and back, you want the X's to be on the weather side, and you want your straight lines to be on the pulley side. Let me get underneath this camera a little better for you. And you want to keep this as flat as possible. So we're going over a row. Again, see how that got crooked right there? We can't have that. So we got to take this, flip that back around. There you go. Pull that nice and tight. Alright, and now again, pull that nice and tight. Your front row here, if it comes through this front row, it goes through the back row over here. If it's on the back row here, it comes through the front row on this one. Now we're going to go straight back. Pull that as tight as we can. And you see on the back side, we're still straight. Now, we're over here to the end. So we're going to run it back through there. That's the only time that an inside to inside will go together. And then we're going to go back through this hole here. And what we're doing here is to keep the belt from walking this way. That's why you'll see these X patterns emerge as we sew. Oh, got it backwards there, didn't I? If you mess up, you have to unlace it, go back and fix that. You do not want any rolled leather on this end, on this side over here. Still flat. Then as we approach the center, we're going to come back through this hole here. And now we're going to start working our way over to the other side of the belt. Then we have our ends here. And then we start working our way back over to the center, the same way as we did on the other side. Making sure we keep our leather straight. Then we're going to come up through here. And then we're going to do our final binding. That's here in the center. We're going to come down. Then we're going to come back up. And then we're going to tie it off. Get that knot just as tight as you can get it. It doesn't have to be pretty. We're going for function. And there you go. Take a utility knife. And there you have it. So to lace a 4-inch belt took about, that was a 6-foot piece of leather. We've got about 18 inches left over. But here you go. Belt can't move side to side. You do have a little part's going to go over the pulley. It's going to bounce a little bit. But in these applications, you're not really using a whole lot of horsepower. Not a whole lot of pressure on the belt. So that's the old way of doing it. It's ugly. It works. Like I said, the one of my grist mills been on there for over 80 years. Still functional. But there are better ways of doing this. Let's move on to the next style. Alright, so the first style of lacing that we're going to use, I've always heard this called clipper. Uses this little closing device here. Sits in your vise. The lacing goes down into these channels, and then you just run this pin through the channels to hold everything in place, and then you use your vise to crimp it. Very, very basic, works very well. So I'm going to cut this, get it to the length of the belt, and I'll see you here in just a minute. Okay, so here we go. We got our teeth, our wires set in the jig. It's in the vise. What we're going to do is we're going to line up this belt. Now, I usually like the first tooth off on the side to be in from the edge about 1/8 of an inch. And I want it to be offset to one side ever so slightly, so when I put the other belt on, the teeth won't be hitting like this. They'll be offset just a little bit, so they'll go nice together and your belts will be nice and aligned. So what we're going to do is, we got it sit in here, we just start cranking. Oh, this vise is not liking this at all. Okay, if it starts to feed up out of your vise like this, Let me show you a little trick. Okay, so if it wants to feed up out of your vise like it just did, open your vise up and sit these underneath your pads here. That'll keep it captured down. Now either one or two things is going to happen. It's either going to sit there and do like it's supposed to do, or now it's going to try to go down against your lead screw or your the screw on your vise. We're going to try it without putting anything underneath it. Sometimes you have to put something underneath there, get it started, back it off, move it up to the top side of your pads, and then go ahead and finish sitting it. Once you have squeezed it all the way in, what you want to do, you have this shim that comes with the kit, with the jig. You're going to sit that in there. You just want to go back down. You want to just tighten them up. You want to make sure you do it to both sides. Get everything in there nice and tight, because the tighter you get it, the longer it's going to last you. When you're done, just pull the pin out, and there you go. Fresh lacing. Now what I will do usually, once I do this, I get me a block of wood, and I want to take a hammer, and I want to flatten these down and get those sharp points. So I'll be back as soon as I get that done. Okay, so here we go. Now these do move around a little bit. You can move them back and forth to get them to how you need them to be once we made it with the other side. I did have to tear that one out. It was punctured on two sides. I got just a little bit too close to the end. It's not going to hurt anything. This right here will do just fine. It will last a very long time the way it is. I'm going to do the other side, then I'll show you how we put them together. Okay, so got everything tightened up here, ready to go together. There we go. You can see it there. And I realized that I am out of lacing pins. So what do? Well, we improvise. And I am using got some 3/32 7013 welding rod. Just took a hammer, knocked the flux off of it. I'm going to take a piece of sandpaper. I'm going to shine this up. We're going to make a pin out of this. Yeah, that'll do. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our pin. We're going to turn us a little 90-degree shoulder down one side of it. Just take your hammer. Little tappy, tappy, tappy. And there you go. Put these belts together. You're just going to align them. You want to have the teeth alternating. Take your time. Let's see here, got these two. On wider belts, you can do little sections at a time. Just, work your way across. Let's see here, I'm one off. Let's do this way. And there we go. Belts for the most part lined up. They can be off a little bit. It's not going to really hurt anything. We're not putting a man on the moon or anything here. And just feed your pin through. Make sure you grab all of the teeth. And there you go. Now, if your belt is running in this direction, you want your shoulder to face backwards. So if your belt's going this way, this little piece right here, you want that facing this way. If it's running this direction, you want that to face backwards. You just don't want it to catch on anything. That's what that's all about. Now all we're going to do is we're going to cut this off, knock that over, and we're done. I'll be back when it's complete. Okay guys, there we have it. Clipper lacing. Now, advantages of this, unlike when we were sewing the belt, this can really only run one way. You have your weather side here, you have your pulley side here. It's going to bounce when it goes across your pulley and everything. You can't have it run on the pulley on this side and then change directions and have a pulley touch this side. On this clipper lacing, it's the same on both sides. So if you have something like an old thresher, where it may have a pulley over here and then come back around and then the pulley touch this side somewhere else. This kind of lacing, in fact this kind of lacing and the other two types of lacing I'm going to show you are going to be perfect for that. Very flexible. It lasts a long time. We had this on the carriage fee of the sawmill. It ran, average 30-40 hours a week. A lacing like this, which was flexing in both ways, we would get 8-10 years of use out of one set before we would have to use it. So it doesn't look like it's all that strong. Most of our wear came out of the pin. We'd have to replace that pin about every 1 or 2 years. And even then we were using coat hanger wire, of all things, for the most part. it was slightly softer than these teeth here, and it would wear. But even at that being the wear point, it still took years to wear out, and it was cheap to replace. But I should keep 4 or 5 of these things up next to the pull stick, and one pull out, one break, pull it out, slide a new one in, bend it up, trim it off, and within 5 minutes we were back in business. So I've got quite a mess over here. I'm going to get all this cleaned up, and then we're going to go with the type that I hate the most, alligator. It works, but I hate it. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to this one. See you in a few minutes. Okay guys, the next type of lacing we have up, and I don't know if this is the actual name of it or not, but we've always called it alligator. And as you look at it, you can see, I don't know if that comes up on camera or not, but it's got a little alligator on it. And this is 35 series lacing. Now, I hate this lacing, and it has nothing to do with the quality of the lacing or how resilient it is. The only reason I hate this stuff is every time I had to get out and fix or make a repair using this lacing, it was never until it was freezing cold outside. I was probably being rained on, or it was sleeting, and I just have a lot of miserable memories of this stuff. So, but it's good lacing. It's tough lacing. It's a lot thicker than the clipper lacing. And there is a jig to install this similar to the clipper lacing. However, we never owned one. So I'm going to show you how we put this on in the field. I want to take a couple minutes. I want to take a pair of bolt cutters, and I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to get everything prepared, and then I'll be back and we'll assemble this. Okay guys, I'm back. I've got the clipping, the lacing cut off. With this, I will usually go ahead and assemble it before I put it on. A lot of times we use this, we're in the field, we didn't have access to a vise, or never did own the jig to it. So what you do, you cut it to size, line it up, and take your 6011 welding rod and stick through it. That's going to set your distance here. Like on the jig we had for the clipper lacing, you had a pin that did that for you. Doing this in the field, you're not so lucky, so we use this stuff. We just use this method. Use 6011 rod, have it cut, and go ahead and assemble it. And then what you do is you line it up. I want to try this in a vise, but normally we would just put it on a block of wood, hit it with a hammer, and just crimp it down with a hammer. I want to try this with a vise. If that doesn't work, I want to turn the camera off because it is very loud, especially on this table, and then I'll show you the results. Okay, so there you have it guys. Here is the alligator 35 belt lacing. My pin material is a 6011 welding rod. It's not as pretty as the clipper lacing obviously, but it's very functional. It's very tough, works great on conveyor belts, and you can still use it on driven belts for power transfer. You know, it's especially if you have a bigger pulley pulling it. Small diameter pulley pulling, I'd be a little concerned about this. That's when it gets on all this metal here, it would break traction. If you're pulling like a cordwood saw or something, you could possibly stall the saw if you was running this and it got around the pulley and it broke traction. So that's something to be mindful of. Something like this would do you a little bit better. So there you have it. Okay, so our last type of lacing, it's also made by the Alligator Company. I've always heard this called butterfly. Not particularly manly sounding, but it does a good job. I'm going to cut off some sections here to sit up on our 4-inch belt, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have the pin material, which is basically a cable. See if it will focus. So it's about a 1/4-inch cable. And to break this stuff off, it's super simple. So my belt is 4 inches wide. You know, it's going to be a little long to run 4 wide here. And this stuff is actually made to run on much wider belts. You know, it comes in like a 3-foot long section. You could put a couple pieces together and run a belt as wide as you wanted to. I have seen it up to about 2 feet wide applications in the field, but you know, it is great for wider belts. And to cut this stuff to length is great. It's already scored, so all you do is just grab it, and there you go. And no fuss, and you still have everything else still together. Hang it up in your shed, and it's ready to go. Okay, so to set this stuff up in order to get it to work right, if you look up inside here, and this is what I love about this stuff, you got this little tang here, so when you put your belt up in it, it's already set right. And it is very, very hard to mess this type of lacing up. And all you have to do to make sure you have it lined up right is when you sit it together, I mean, it's perfect. I mean, it lines up perfect. This is great, great stuff. I'm going to go ahead and cut the pin material, the cable here. Go ahead and cut it to length, and when I come back, we'll slap this together. Okay, so it is literally 3 minutes after I started this, if that, and it's already hammered in. If you look on the back side, it's got these holes that it goes through, and all you got to do is just take your punch or your hammer or whatever, lay it over, kind of lock it in. Between the sewing, the clipper, and what I call alligator, this by far is my favorite. The only thing it concerns me about this would be going across a small powered pulley, like if you was same thing with this. If you was pulling like a cordwood saw or something and you had a smaller pulley, I don't know if this would cause it to break traction and stall the saw. You know, that might be where something like this would come in better. But I'm gonna, again, I'm gonna finish tapping those down flat. I got a couple of them still sticking up a little bit. I'm gonna flip it over, take my punch, and then we'll review everything. Okay guys, so got everything folded over. If you look on the back side here, you got these little pockets. Let me show you one that hasn't been installed yet. You got these little pockets here, little recesses, that the ends of the staples go in, and you just fold them over. And they're not perfectly flat with the bottom. They stick up a little bit, but they're somewhat recessed. Gives you a very nice, neat looking connection. This particular one is Alligator RS 187. I'm not endorsing Alligator. I'm not sponsored by Alligator. This is just what was available to me to use for this video. Of the 4, this was the easiest to install. I've said before, I don't know how this is going to perform on a small driven pulley pulling something like a cordwood saw or a grist mill or water pump, whatever, especially on the smaller diameters. With so much metal here and the fact that flat belts normally don't run all that tight, I'm concerned this may break traction on the driven pulley and possibly stall the implement that you're running. In some cases that's going to be annoying. In the case of a cordwood saw, which if you're running one, you already know they're dangerous. There's a lot better options out there, but if you're one of those people who want to run one, hey, my hat's off to you. I don't like being near them, and I guess it's like anything else. If you know what you're doing, it's one thing. I don't, so I'm staying away from them. But I would be concerned, definitely, on a pulley slipping, driving something like this. The same with the Alligator 35. I did look on the website. There is an installation kit here. It's basically a rod with some clips to hold it back against these curved areas here. Same thing that I do with a 6011 welding rod and a screwdriver. This is actually available on Amazon. I think it was Amazon, might have been eBay. Again, not endorsing Alligator, not sponsored by Alligator. Is what was available to me to show you this style of lacing. Clipper, again, not endorsing Clipper, not sponsored by Clipper. This is what I have the most experience with. It's what we used a lot of. It does seem, in my experience, it does seem to work well with smaller diameter driven flat belt pulleys. Even though it is metal there, it's kind of small, so your PSI against the pulley, I guess, is a little higher. It's not spread out so much. Have never had a problem with this. Obviously not as durable as the Butterfly and the Alligator, but I do know that I have never had problems with this slipping on a driven pulley. And like I said, it's durable. I mean, I've got a lot of experience with it, and I'm very satisfied with it. And you can, all of these, you can have the pulley on the pulley side and the weather side in the same system. Like, now, say if a belt goes around something, all three of these will work. And then lastly, the first one we did, the sewed, which you can see, I didn't catch this till later. I made a little mistake right here. Nothing big, still functional, still going to hold the belt tight, still going to last a long time. But you can only use these on one side. You can't have these knots running over your pulley. It's just going to sit there and pop, 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 bounce. And, like I said, my grist mill's belt sewed 85 years ago, and it's still getting it. Okay, guys, well, there you have it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe below. Leave a comment if it's something you wanted to try. Hey, maybe we can make it happen. Just leave me a note down below. We're more happy to take a look at it and see what we can get done. Well, I'll see you next time on the shed.